Skibbity bee bop, boop, boop, beepity bop.
Man, you're fresh out the shower.
I had to look at least somewhat presentable for this, right?
No, you're good, man. I kind of just woke up too. Like, if you look below this shirt, I don't know if you can see the shirt, but
Yeah.
I'm in pajamas.
Okay. Hey, what time zone are you in?
I guess, what is it, Mountain Central, something like that? Is that a time zone?
I thought you were in the United States just based on your videos and everything.
Yeah. I'm like a British guy with a really strong American accent. I'm just joking. No.
There's just so many sim racers that are British or in some other country. It's kind of crazy. So
yeah, I think it's because racing in general, like, is like it's more popular like in Europe and all that kind of stuff. It's just more like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's like soccer and auto racing are their two main things.
Yeah.
While here it's kind of like football, baseball, maybe some NASCAR, but that's kind of gone downhill since the 2000s. So
yeah, NASCAR is cool, but I really like, I don't know. I like sort of more tech tracks. NASCAR is all about like racing against the people. Like the technique needs to be impeccable, so you can like drafting and all that. But so how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I don't know exactly what you're going to be asking things, so I'm kind of just going to be answering off the cuff, I guess. So
okay. I do have some structured questions, and then also, like whatever we talk about is cool. And this video will be edited, so it's not going to be like 100% live. If something weird happens in the background, and there's like a burglary or something like that, I probably won't include that. So
I mean, hey, I've seen your videos, and I mean, I'm down if you wanted to include that, but I think my life's going to be too boring over here, so I don't think there'll be anything interesting like that.
Okay. Are you near your rig, by the way?
Yes, but also my rig is in pieces a bit because I got a bunch of so my Fanatec CSL DD just showed up.
Oh.
So it's kind of, I mean, here. I've got it in a kind of a state. There it is over there, but it's overall in a state. But I mean, there's what I have right now, but like the monitor's taken off and things like that. I don't know if you can see everything. Okay. Oh yeah, I can watch and show. But so that's the default kind of there. I'm just missing my monitor and then CSL DD, but that bad boy's over there. And then I got a pile of other boxes because I've been working on getting into product reviews. So got the CSL pedals. I got the G29 there on the floor. Yeah, I got like every mainstream wheel now, which is something I've been working on doing for a while because I want to compare the different products to each other. Because like the Logitech G27 versus the CSL DD, G29 versus DD, etc.
That's going to be a popular video, I guarantee it.
Because I always find the live streams, if people do too many, it gets kind of annoying.
Yeah, no, I get you. It's kind of cool every once in a while. I think I've only done actually one live stream where I ate a bowl of Cheerios live for some reason, but it was stupid.
Your videos are so random sometimes.
Yeah. So let's start off with the name of your channel. And I'm going to ask like a really dumb question. The name of your channel is A Casual Sim Racer. Would you race professionally if you were given the opportunity?
It would depend on the salary and the situation and if I had to quit my current job. But let's say I didn't have to quit my current job. Yes, I would race professionally on the side. If I could essentially continue at my current salary and race professionally and that's it, I would do that as well. So yes.
What do you do outside of work, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm an attorney. I work for education, and they do other public law areas, but I do mostly like business and construction law, but think of it for public agencies. So it gets really complicated because you're dealing with state-owned agencies and there's entire like codes specified, which is cool because it ends up like where school district has a lot of power to get out of something, but then we have to figure out how to do that using the codes and all that. So that's my day-to-day job. So
you have a passion for it, it seems like.
It's something I enjoy. It's not as fun as sim racing or actually racing real cars would be. And for a time I was full on, like I played arena football for a year after getting out of college. Like I was really trying to go that NFL route. I was a long snapper, so I had a particular skill and I was trying to get there and it just never panned out. So there's two other things in my life that are ahead of it. But apart from that, yeah, it's my probably the third thing in my life.
Wow. I don't think I've ever met anybody that arena football, it's that more extreme version of football, right? Kind of. Is that what I'm thinking?
It wasn't that extreme in the league I played in. We were pretty low level, but it was just more like a football on a small field. Yeah, You're playing on an ice hockey rink covered in turf, essentially.
Okay. So getting back into sim racing, how long have you been sim racing?
Since around Grand Prix Legend days, so quite a while. Grand Prix Legends came out in 1998, but there was a patch in 2002, and then I just was kind of semi-casual, and then, or like just really just on and off. Pretty much only played that game, and then when around 2017, 2016, I think, is when I bought my T300, and that's when I kind of was like big into it and started thinking, you know what, maybe I should start doing a YouTube channel, and that took forever. That took till like 2019 for me to start that, but yeah.
So what was the gear like back then? Were you did you have the peripherals back then?
So I had I have a wait a moment.
Okay, yeah, you good?
I'll show you something. I think I actually have it laying around here. This is one of those old Logitech driving force wireless wheels. You just sit in your lap, you don't even have pedals, and you just move the paddles on the back. So this would be your throttle. This is your brake. And then, it's pretty simple. It did have force feedback, very rudimentary compared to today. So what's weird about Grand Prix Legends is they didn't release the demo for the game until like 4 or 5 years after the game was released.
Oh.
Which is really weird. And the fan base started off super slow, and then it built a few years later. It was very odd how that worked. But sim racing was a lot different. As long as just the gaming market overall, things weren't so much of we're going to release a game and then the next year we're looking for a new release.
Okay. What's your absolute favorite current title?
Current title, favorite, probably Assetto Corsa. If I was going to go for my favorite, the one I put the most time into, if I was going to go for the one I feel like maybe the most realistic or the one that I enjoy but just doesn't have enough content to keep me locked in, would be Assetto Corsa Competizione. So
man, they got it locked. Yeah, they got the sim racing on lock. If Assetto Corsa didn't feature like the extensive set of mods and all that, would you still be playing Assetto Corsa?
No, it would be Assetto Corsa Competizione for sure.
Okay. So it's all about that huge amount of content.
Well, and just the fact that, who's it, Aja? I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name, how he's created Content Manager, and that has pretty much made an entire new game. Okay. I mean, that right there has transformed it so much. And I have a mod studio I own and manage called Casual Sim Studios, and we create cars, or we're working on creating mod cars that'll be coming out, the first pack December 1st of this year, and then the second pack January 1st of next year. And so that's something that Assetto Corsa is actually opening up a business opportunity for me to do. I have 2 employees, and we're working to really try to build something awesome. Hopefully it pans out. If it doesn't, well, it was fun to try. So.
Well, that's something that we're going to definitely have to include in the description there. That's so there's no links for it currently, right? It's not.
No, it's. I have some YouTube videos highlighting the progress.
Okay.
And so that's something, and I also have a forum thread on Race Department where I post almost daily updates of my 3D modeling progress and other things that I've been doing to the car. So.
Yeah. After the interview, send me those links and I'll include them in the description. That's really cool. That's super cool, actually. So in terms of gear. I know you have a huge range of gear, as we just spoke about. But what's your absolute favorite piece of gear right now?
Well, I haven't got to try out my CSL DD yet, so I can't say that yet. So probably my Thrustmaster T300. I've had that thing for a while, and I started off. That was my third wheel, and I've started off getting the G29. I've gotten the T150. I've gotten the what was the other one? I just recently got a G27. I've gotten the Fanatec Elite pedals, Fanatec CSL pedals. Gotten quite a range of gear. Nothing matches the T300 in terms of just the smoothness and the clarity of the wheel. And also it's lasted me 5-6 years of just constantly using that thing. It's been through 3 or 4 moves. I mean, the thing's a tank, and it's as strong and as great as day one. So I got to give it to that.
How do you feel about Fanatec kind of getting into the automobile industry, and actually making a wheel that's compatible with a racing vehicle? You just pop it on.
I think it's really cool. It's something I think they're kind of trying to, if they can get into the automobile industry more fully, that's just another huge avenue for them to make money. And that's not something I'm opposed to, because as someone who works in a lot of business-related things, the more a company can secure its future, that means it has the ability to try new things for us. So sure, we got the advantage of now having to be able to put those on our wheels. Maybe it's a little bit unaffordable right now, but potentially down the future, those prices drop a bit. Potentially down the future, there's new products because of those connections. So I think it's a really good thing for our community, and also I think it's a good thing for Fanatec, which I'm not opposed to. I think good on them for being such a smart company.
Yeah, I mean, I have my complaints about them, but they have an insanely good marketing team, and they are making big moves for the sim racing community. I agree with that. What are some games you're looking forward to coming up here?
Oh, can I say something kind of controversial?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm waiting for the day that Automobilista 2 is finished.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just it's getting closer, I think, but it's just still, there's a couple things there that I just can't get into it that much. So I'm excited for when that's actually closer to release, like a full, what I would say, a finished state of the game. I'm also excited for the Gran Turismo 7. It'll be coming out. I think that'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to career mode. I don't think I'll have much of it on my channel at all, but I am looking forward to eventually obtain a PlayStation 5 and kind of going back to a little bit of childhood roots and things like that and enjoying some of that.
I actually think Fanatec is waiting to release their PlayStation model, the CSL-DD, as a bundle for that game. So
it wouldn't surprise me if they had some contract with PlayStation, considering the moves they've been making, and they can't until it's released.
Oh, there you go. That's good perspective.
Yeah, because if they do a bundle where it's like you get a PlayStation 5 special branding, the wheel comes together and all that, I could see PlayStation being like, you know what, we want this to be like the first that comes out, because if it was released beforehand, the bundle doesn't become as valuable.
Yeah. What do you think in terms of like console gaming? Do you think, console gaming is obviously more mainstream in some ways for gaming because it's like really focused. What do you think it can do for the sim racing world in terms of bringing that to more people?
I think it's a very good avenue, honestly, and I'm interested to see how Xbox goes, because it seems like they're making theirs more PC-like every day.
Yeah.
So my thought is that potentially they'll be just PCs with more of a gaming interface overlaid over top. PlayStations, I think, will stay more console-like, but I think it's good overall. I like the opportunity for us to essentially, you can buy a $500, well, maybe not quite $500 because of the scalping, but you can buy a relatively affordable, powerful console/computer that then you can hook things up. Like right now, you look at like the PlayStation 4, it could barely run a set of Corsa Competizione, which was a bummer, but the PlayStation 5 now kills it. So I think it's trending in the right direction. We're finally getting to the point where they have the power to actually do sim racing correctly, and I think that's going to be really good.
How do you feel about like the limited availability of sim racing products? Because I mean, with PC, the world's open. You can get anything you want and have it work somehow. But with console, it's really restrictive. Like how do you feel? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing that PlayStation like really locks their ecosystem to just PlayStation branded stuff?
So I'm not a huge fan of that, but I get where they're coming from a business perspective. So it's not like something I think is going to change, and it's not like I'm like death to PlayStation because of it. I do think, and I hope that more cross-console, cross-PC play starts happening, because I do worry about lobbies for certain games being focused into one, like either just being on PlayStation or just be on PC, which sometimes we see happen. And so I wish that would open up more. I think I've heard some things in the background that there's rumors that more of that's going to start happening, because as they've done in the past, they've learned, it actually doesn't really hurt our sales when we open it up. So I think once some of the current contracts end, because they have certain contract obligations that lock things in, once some of those open up and start to be renewed, I think that will start opening up some more opportunities for cross-console play.
Okay. And in terms of like the actual gear itself, I think it's kind of odd that they choose to really limit, only if you license with us can you use your products. Like I just don't understand why they do that. Like why wouldn't they just
there's a couple of reasons that, from my perspective. One is because they can really control, essentially, okay, we're limiting the products to these products, and we can make sure they'll work well with our games across all the PlayStation racing games.
Yeah, that's
At least
true.
That's the idea in theory. I get that. I just wish it was easier to get a license. Okay, I understand, but can you make it easier to get a license then? I do think it presents a good opportunity, though. We have like Drive Hub, I think, and other products that allow you to then plug some components that normally wouldn't be natively work with, let's say, PlayStation. I think it gives a big opportunity, and I hope with the rise of sim racing, we'll see a couple more products enter the market. It's something that I was interested in, actually reached out to a couple manufacturers in China and Taiwan about, and it didn't really go anywhere. The hardware market is a tough egg to crack, and I realized that wasn't for me. But
in terms of some gear that's coming up, I asked you about like some games coming up. What's some gear that excites you?
So I'm very interested in seeing some of the more Fanatec products that are going to be coming out, I guess, since I'm now getting more and more into that ecosystem with the CSL DD. I'm also interested the Alpha Mini from is it SimiCube?
SimMagic. Everyone gets that confused. That's funny.
You're getting you're getting one of those sent to you to review, I believe, and that interests me a lot. But I don't think I'll have the opportunity, at least for a while, to get my hands on something like that. But I'm interested in some of those lower end, direct drive wheels that'll be coming out. I'm also interested in seeing what a Thrustmaster responds, because if they don't respond right now, supposedly they got a direct drive wheel in development. But if they don't respond with a solid product, it's going to be, I think it's going to be difficult for them for the next couple of years.
Yeah, Thrustmaster is a peripheral company like Logitech, like we talked about in the last interview. Logitech is a company that they got their hands in everything, so they're not hugely impacted if their sim racing division goes down, right? Like
100%. Yep.
But Thrustmaster, it's a bigger deal to them, So I do agree. Like if they misstep on their direct drive release, I think it could be really bad for them.
I was trying to get my hands on the GT2 and wheel, and I cannot find it. It's sold out all over the place. I wondered if they pulled it because of such a backlash on that wheelbase.
What wheelbase are you talking about?
It was the $750 package. They had the Thrustmaster GT, and then they had just released the GT2, and it was a belt drive wheel, I believe. Anyways, it's got a huge backlash. Only like Viper Concept, he got his hands on a pre-release version to test and do a video about and review. And after that, I haven't hardly seen anything about it, because there was a big backlash of like, why are you releasing this when we have roughly $680 you could put together a Fanatec package.
Oh.
So.
Ooh, yeah, you got a good point there. Yeah, they're going to have to switch up their marketing strategy. Yeah.
And they spent the rumor was they spent like 2 years on developing that, and now it's pretty much, I guess, unmarketable, because you got a product that you're stuck comparing it to the 5 Newton version, but still coming in less with better pedals, better wheel.
It's instantly obsolete.
Yeah, that was the problem I ran into.
Wow.
And I don't know how much that hurts you financially, because they probably got units sitting in production they don't know what to do with. So I think they're going to have to either scrap it, depending on how many they've made, or potentially drop the price by like $100.
So with your Thrustmaster T300, what is the biggest complaint you have about the wheelbase? The kit in general, just like the wheelbase, whatever.
Okay. So I got the GT, the RS GT. I have like no complaints with the wheelbase itself, because of the fact you can change the wheel rims out. I've changed mine out all the time, and you can order different wheels because you have that ecosystem, which is really cool for a mid-range wheel, and it's durable as all get out. The pedals that come with it, though, because the normal version comes with those cheapy plastic ones that are trash. The GT version is supposed to come with better pedals, but they're also like trash. I mean, the firmness, and they're all the same. The clutch, brake, I mean, they're just pretty. Yeah, they're pretty crappy. I can actually get them if you'd be interested, and I can demonstrate.
Yeah. Let's see what you're talking about there. Yeah.
Here's the Thrustmaster GT pedals, essentially. I don't know exactly what they're called, but that's what they're called in the set. My understanding is you can only get these in the set. So anyways, if I take a force gauge and I use it on them.
Oh, that's handy.
We're looking at, I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, kind of.
But that's peak of around 27.5
Okay.
Newton force. That was the throttle pedal. If I do it on the brake pedal, we're talking like maybe 40-ish Newton meters of force peak. It's a little stiffer, but I think it's more. And then on this one, it's about the same 40 Newton meters of force on the clutch. And it's more because I think the throttle, I've used it more, so I've worn the spring down. So I think originally they were roughly all about the same, around 40 Newton meters. And it's just one of those things where the travel, and illustrate that, the travel on them's about like that. They all have the exact same amount of travel.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you're doing that with one finger says a lot right there.
Yeah, with my pinky finger.
Okay.
Like, it's just there's nothing to it, and so they're pretty crappy. So pretty early on, I switched them out for the Fanatec Elite pedals with load cell.
Okay. Yeah.
And those have been my go-to to pair with the Thrustmaster T300 for quite a while. I was just recording a product review for him last night. Throttle is actually a little bit unimpressive. The throw range is a bit shorter than I thought. But the brake pedal is actually quite impressive. I was actually doing some comparisons to the Fanatec Elite with load cell, and it has a larger travel distance, and actually some of the forces that you have to put in through the range, I actually think are better. Oh. And sure, it's a foam pad, so it's going to probably wear down more quickly over time. But I think it's very comparable to at least to the Fanatec Elite's load cell.
Yeah, I think Fanatec made a really good move on those pedals, making them a lot more approachable with that price. What do you feel like is missing? You know, we could be talking about in a general sense, like in sim racing, the community, games, gear. What do you think is missing in sim racing?
I think one thing that maybe surprises me a little, at least in terms of the gear side of things, there's very few pedals that have force feedback in them.
Yeah, okay.
That is something to me that is cheap. You just put a little vibration in there. I mean, you could have wheels with more of that, less of that. I've seen it a little bit. I think there's the V3s now have a little bit of that force feedback in the brake pedal. I'm really interested. I really want one of those. Like, that's the next thing I'm saving up for gear-wise. But it's one of those things where I think that should be something that should be added, even on lower-end wheels, because it wouldn't cost that much. You just add one vibration sensor in, like the brake pedal, and that's going to add so much more feedback for sim racing. So it's something in terms of gear. That's what I think should be the next step. Sure, let's get the DD wheels, direct drive wheels going, but then let's move on and get some of that force feedback going into pedals, because I know not everyone can get a motion rig. Yeah. That just adds more immersion, because now you're getting that motion and feedback in your feet as well as in your arms, and I think that would just be the next logical step.
Yeah, with that, you're 100% right. I do have the V3s and the motors. On PC, you can program them to activate at a certain time with brake pressure. On console, it's super limited, only certain games. I think WRC, is the only game I know of that actually utilizes it. But they have a contract with Fanatec. Before I set up this current rig, I was using a Next Level Racing, I can't remember what it's called, but it was like their entry-level rig. It had a center post and stuff. And the vibration from the pedals that I have, it actually transferred vibration to the wheel. It transferred vibration to my butt. You know, I could feel it throughout the whole rig. And it actually gave me a better sense of what the car was doing, like you were saying. And I do agree with that. And it's kind of like a shitty version of a butt kicker. You know, like a really small, like a little bit of tactile feedback.
Yeah, but it's not going to be that big of a thing for manufacturers to produce. I think honestly, like a lower end, imagine if the CSL pedals, imagine if they had just been $20 more, but they'd included vibration in the brake pedal.
Oh, that would be huge.
You're talking $100 pedal with, maybe that would be, they're going to have that load cell kit supposedly coming out for, imagine if that load cell kit came with the vibration added to it, and you're paying like $100 for this extra pedal, but it comes with vibration and it's load cell. That'd be a killer product, I think, in the market.
I don't think Fanatec's opposed to stealing people's ideas, so
hey,
maybe they'll catch wind of it.
Hire me as a legal counsel or ideas or whatever. Hey, just reach out to me.
I actually really like that idea, and that could be a game changer. Actually, if they were to include that technology on an entry level product, You know, instead of reserving it only for like their upper end stuff, you know, because that creates a barrier, you know, it creates a wall, 100%. You know. And that's a great point.
And they're breaking down barriers with their new direct drive wheel. Why don't they break down barriers with their pedals? And because of the way they've structured their things, they have the opportunity. So
there are a couple other companies I saw. Do you watch Sim Racing Garage at all?
Oh, of course. I think I'm subscribed to everybody that does this stuff.
Okay, I think it was either him or it might have been Boosted Media, but someone actually reviewed a pedal set that's brand new to the market, and I don't know if it's a pedal set or if it's a mod to an existing pedal set, but I remember they featured vibration motors on, I think, all 3 of the pedals, or maybe they were just breaking the throttle, but that could be the next thing. You might have just pegged it right there.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, it'll be interesting to see as well what happens with third-party wheels and steering wheels, because of the fact we've seen now Fanatec collaborate with real auto racing manufacturers, because I could actually see auto racing manufacturers being like, okay, well, we don't have to do that much to enter into the sim racing market. All we got to do is make a wheel that's compatible, and they just make a deal with somebody, and then they release it. So I think that could be something we see in the coming years. I also think third-party manufacturers who produce, you know, the Fanatec CSL-DD has the very expensive $150 power pack. I think that's a right for third market to come in $50 institute. So
I did some investigation on that, and I was actually putting in a product support claim, because my CSL-DD doesn't work with my H pattern shifter no matter what I do. So when I actually went through some of their frequently asked questions, one of the things was if you use a third-party power supply, you will void your warranty.
Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, and I was like, damn, like they know they're going to have some competition here once someone comes up with something.
Because I don't know if you saw, was it a video or Reddit post? I think it was a Reddit post. Somebody got one working with their
polymer.
Yeah,
he's one of my subscribers. He's super cool. He actually makes YouTube content as well besides that video. But if someone could put together like a really solid one that positively wouldn't fry my wheelbase, I would definitely review it on the channel, you know.
Or even if it had a warranty, because I mean, here's the thing too, it's going to be tough to get main market support. So if someone was brave enough to warranty the wheel as well as the device itself, now that might raise the price a bit. You might not be undercutting it as much, but you know, be an option.
Now, if someone has any questions about this, they can go to you because you have some legal background. So you could write them up a contract, or not a contract, a disclaimer. What would it be?
You could do a disclaimer of warranty, disclaimer of implied warranty would be the bigger issue. Yeah.
Kind of relating to what's missing in the market, you know, and blowing people's minds in that regard. What's the biggest mind-blowing experience you've experienced throughout your entire sim racing career?
So actually, like in terms of like a driving experience?
Anything, like experience, gear, game.
I don't think anything gear-wise has really blown my mind. Everything was kind of like, okay, this is like what I expect, or maybe this is as good as I could have hoped for kind of experience, which is good, but nothing really blew my mind. I have had a couple of very immersive racing experiences. And it's kind of funny because I know I was picking on Automobilista 2 just a little bit ago, but it was actually just recently in Automobilista 2, I did a 2.5 hour race.
Oh,
there
wow. It's brutal.
Yeah, with the time, acceleration, and all that appropriate for the 24 hours of Daytona. And I was driving the GT1s, which I actually think is one of the better cars, because I think the biggest issue with Automobilista 2 isn't so much the overall game engine, it's just some of the cars aren't quite finished and some of the setups are really wonky. And so I think the GT1s are pretty solid. And so I was driving the Mercedes GT1, and I did a 2.4 hour race with Group B and Group C cars also. And it was just one of those experiences you kind of fall in between. The Group C are a little faster, the Group B obviously are slower, and that GT1 kind of fell into that middle group. And it was awesome. I mean, it was just one of those things. The graphics are amazing. I did it late at night because I was doing something. I just didn't feel like sleeping. And so it was like 2 a.m. or something by the time I finished. And it was just one of those things. It was just like dark, and it just immersed me fully. And by the time I was finished, I was just drenched in sweat. And I was just like, wow, that was awesome. Oh, it was awesome. I slept like a baby. So
nice. Okay. Are you into VR at all?
No, I bought a VR headset and I tried it, and just with my glasses as well as with just kind of the fact that I found myself not racing as much. Sure, it was kind of immersive once I got into it, but just the hassle of putting it on, get kind of sweaty and foggy, and I just decided, you know what, I kind of just like the ease of popping down behind a single monitor and going. Hopefully I'll have triples someday, but VR, I just don't think it's for me.
So you think maybe VR is not quite there yet in terms of mainstream appeal?
It wasn't even that for me. I could see how, like, I enjoyed the VR gaming, like just the regular VR games and stuff, and I was like, this is great. But for the sim racing, it just took away the fact that, I can sit down for 5-10 minutes and run a 2-3 lap race. Okay. I don't have a ton of time in my day, and a lot of times I like to sit down, do it, and then go straight to bed. I'd have a sweaty face, and I have to shower afterwards or whatever with VR. And it just got to be the inconvenience of putting something on my face, the inconvenience of having to put contacts in. It just kind of was. That's what was the factor for me. So if they get to the point maybe where it's like you're putting on a pair of glasses or something,
that's coming.
That would, yeah, the comfortableness, I guess, is more the factor, and the convenience rather than once you're in it, the experience itself, like the fidelity and all that. Yeah. I thought that was fine.
So as a whole, I mean, it might not be the best for your situation, like time wise and just ease of use. How important do you feel is VR to sim racing in the future?
That's an interesting question. So, like, I just got posed a question very similar to that on one of the forums, because they were like, are you going to test all the 3D models you're making, the cars that I'm developing in VR? And I was like, no. If some of my small testing group I have, if they have VR, sure, that'd be great, but we're not going to go out our way to test it. And I'm sorry, but just wait and maybe see what other people's reactions are, and don't be a first day buyer if you want to really use them in VR. We're going to look for all bugs or whatever, but if there's something about the way we make our cars, I mean, we're making to the highest level possible, but if there's something specific to VR that we have to do, we're not necessarily doing that. And it's just something from the production side of things. It's just an entire another thing I'd have to worry about, and it's just something at this point there's not enough users using it for me to cater what I'm doing to VR users. And so I kind of understand the same perspective from the other side, and I'm not sure it's going to change because of the fact it's an additional cost for VR headsets. And it's also, there's kind of still that inconvenience factor. And there's also, it's not just that, there's a lot of people still that don't think the fidelity is high enough. So I think maybe we get 6 to 8 years down the road, and you ask me this question again, and I'd say, sure, now I see it start being a big pressing issue, but I think for the next 5 years or so, it's not going to be that big for sim racing.
Okay, so you having some insight in developing things for video games, you can kind of understand more how a big time game developer like with WRC10 wouldn't include VR in the game.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And the thing is, too, I think a lot of it, too, comes from my day career, and I deal with a lot of big companies occasionally and things like that, and I see, why are you making decisions that are probably going to tick off a lot of people, And typically there's a business decision or a contract decision that essentially either ties their hands or it just doesn't make logical business sense for them to do it. And I see that on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's almost the bigger side of things. And so I kind of knew what I was getting into when I started this Casual Sim Studios, and I see that a little bit, but I'm such a small player in that scene that it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's more from my law career.
Top 3 sims.
Assetto Corsa Competizione, and then third one's going to be kind of tough. I mean, Grand Prix Legends pops up there. I might go with Grand Prix Legends.
Okay.
My third. I have been playing a lot of the WRC10 a lot, and I think there's definitely some issues with it. So it's up there as well. Yeah, let's go with Grand Prix Legends as third. Just, it's such a legacy. It's what brought me into the thing, and it's still like, there's still a large community around that game, which is crazy 23 years later after it was released.
That is impressive. So if you could create your perfect game with the physics from one game, the graphics from one game, the sound from one game, and the features like compatibility with wheels, VR, triple screen support, and all that stuff. So what would your game of choice be for graphics?
Automobilista 2. It's the best looking game out there. And so I would take that, and also it has great VR support from what I've heard, supports triple screen well. So you take those graphics, I'd pair it with the Assetto Corsa Competizione physics engine, and then I would stick probably the some of the modability of Assetto Corsa. I do think Assetto Corsa is a bit too free range in my own opinion. It's not sustainable. I don't think it led. I mean, Kunos almost got sued like a dozen times, and so that's where like Assetto Corsa 2. Assetto Corsa 2, I think, could be the dream game coming out. But as I had a video on this. There's no way it's going to be open to modding as it is now. I think it'll be more like maybe Microsoft Flight Simulator or other games where they have a store. Farm Simulator, I think, has a similar thing, where you have a store and you essentially have almost approved mods, or where they can at least moderate it more easily. They can kick a mod out or whatever.
In terms of online gaming, what upsets you the most? Like in terms of if it's like connection issues, is it the people itself, like creating a bad environment for your play sessions? What's some things that annoy you?
I have my answer. Being slow.
Okay.
I'm just not very fast at sim racing. Honestly, I'm so competitive. That's probably the biggest thing. So I don't do a ton of online racing, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm in a league on VAC, Vintage Assetto Corsa Racing or whatever, and I do some racing with that, and I'm terrible. I'm always in the back. So that annoys the tar to me, and every time I finish a race, I'm like, I'm never going to do this again. And then I do it again. But so other than that, though, probably in terms of just the racing quality itself, getting punted by someone, things like that. And for me, I see a lot of that because I can never get out of the slow people, and I always ends up being a mix of slow and reckless people. And for me, it's disappointing because as a slow driver, I wish I could get like matched with not just slow and bad racing people, with slow, clean people. And that's occasionally you'll see that. iRacing, you can get that a little bit. You have to race for a while, though, quite a while, and it can be frustrating because typically if you're finishing slow, they don't tend to you're more likely to be back with the bad drivers, and so you're more likely to get run into. And in a lot of other games, there's just no consideration at all. If you're slow, you're stuck with the bad drivers. So it's something that I wish would change about how they split up. More of a focus on safety, and then second, a focus on like your speed and all that.
That's a good point. Okay. So in terms of iRacing, how do you feel about their subscription model and their pricing for cars and tracks and all that stuff?
It annoys the tar out of me, but I get it because it works. And as a business model, it's a genius. It's one of those things where I wish they almost had competition in the space because that's the biggest problem. They have no one that can even deliver an online model like theirs. There's no one that can do what they're doing to produce it, because I'm totally fine. Like I think the race room model of buying all the content individually, that's a great way to do it. I think that's fantastic. I love that approach. For some people, that's really good, and it also for the company, I think it allows them to make money in a manner that helps to support their growth. Then you look at other games where it's a one-time buy and you get everything. I also think it's totally cool for someone to have a subscription based. You pay a subscription and you get everything. If you stop paying your subscription, you get nothing. The big complaint I have about iRacing is not the fact that you buy content and not the fact that you subscribe. It's the fact that you buy content, or license it as they call it, and then when you stop paying your subscription, you can't have access to the content you paid money for. And that single component is what ticks me off. I do not like that part. Everything else is fine.
So you think maybe if you pay the subscription, you should be able to participate online, but you should be able to keep the cars and the tracks for offline play kind of thing.
Something like that. Yeah, there's just something
time
about
trials.
There's something that seems a bit dirty about the fact that they don't allow you to use the content you paid for. Yeah. Okay,
so that's like paid DLC, but then you got to also pay the monthly fee to use it. Like it's like double negative or double shady. Okay.
Yeah, that's the part that, and like exactly like you mentioned, they're now implementing AI. So that would be cool if they at least allowed that. I don't think it would happen. I think the best you could probably hope for is, like you said, some type of practice testing mode where you could still use it.
That would be reasonable, I think. I think, I spend a lot of time if I'm playing on a more grip racing type of scenario, I pretty much just hot lap, I'm not really good enough to kind of keep up with a lot of the more established racers, and I don't want to step on their toes and crash into them. And I enjoy that, you know, like I enjoy testing out different cars and tracks and just get the flavor, you know. So I do think they could improve on that. You're right. I have zero experience with iRacing because that subscription model completely turns me off.
It's definitely, I think that's the thing. I think from my perspective, if I was going to be sitting in iRacing shoes, I would be reevaluating that, because I know it does turn off a lot of people without them ever even trying anything or anything like that. And it really is a solid game engine, but why wouldn't you change it to be at least a little more user friendly?
Yeah.
Maybe have a couple of cars that are always free to play. Something like that.
Yeah. Whether it be like a Volkswagen Beetle or, you know, something. Just something. Yeah. Okay. Now, in terms of the community, as in a general sense, how do you feel the community in sim racing is? Is it like is it overly positive, overly negative? You know.
So I didn't realize how toxic it was until I started producing and developing. Now, this is the development side. This is where
this is interesting. Okay.
I have gotten so many negative messages. Some I suspect from other smaller third-party mod developers. I know of one person that's very anti what I'm doing. They don't like someone coming out of nowhere and trying to enter a market and hire people and do what I'm doing. Because essentially how I got into this to get started is I found people that really had really good skills, and I threw them a ton of money, essentially, at least for what people pay in this. And I had that ability because I got a new job through my day-to-day job. And so I was like, okay, well, I really want to try this. So I'm going to set aside, a couple, 20 grand and throw it at this and see if I can do this for a year and how long it'll last. And most people don't walk into the sim racing market like, I'm going to start a mod studio. I got 20 grand. Let's see what we can do. And so that's essentially what I did. And I've gotten some negative responses to that. And people are very critical, which depending how they go about it isn't a bad thing, but sometimes it's like a very personal attack. You're crap, your cars are crap, and it's just like, what? I'm just trying to get, I'm literally entering the market. Can't you have a little bit of understand? And these are also, I haven't released anything yet. I'm not even selling it yet. It's just I'm showing you pre-alpha versions.
Yeah, progress. Yeah.
Yes, and you're just coming at me like I'm a piece of crap, and it's just I don't know. It was extremely toxic. And actually, there's on Race Department, there's the what is it? The one forum where it's always show what your progress is or whatever forum. I forget the name of it. What are you working on? What are you working on forum? And that forum is extremely toxic, and I actually had to leave. So I had to leave posting on there and create my own thread because I was just getting so much hate through my personal messages as well as just on there. And it was just one of those things. It was just everyone wanted to start an argument on there, or they wanted to send me personal messages. And so essentially I just decided, you know what, I'm done. And so now I pretty much interact primarily through the VAC site. I have my own thread on Discord on there, and so I post updates on there, and then I have my own thread in Race Department, which you said you're going to link down the video description, so people can check out the Race Department thread, and those are where I just post updates, post the same thing in both of those, and people can see the progress of what I'm doing. And I'm just kind of avoiding the forums where I don't have control, because I've just got tired of that negative feedback. I want a positive vibe while I'm trying to do this, because if I do fail, I at least want it to be a fun experience while I'm doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, being that it's a work in progress, you can always add to it and you can make it better. So it's you're right. It's kind of odd that people would be so quick to jump on you about that even before it's released. But
but in speaking of the sim racing community, when I was just doing the sim racing only, I've always thought it was pretty positive. And overall, there's not too much. Sometimes you'll get some trolls or whatever you run into, but overall, I think the sim racing community is a very positive community overall. And I've heard people who are very much against kind of the growing that happened during the pandemic. You know how it really grew during the stay at home. Some people are against that, and I think that's kind of ridiculous. I'm very much into let's grow our community, let's make this global.
It can only make things better.
I think so. Bring in more manufacturers. Of course, you're going to have more trolls because scale of growth, that's going to happen. But focus on the good, not the bad, I think is what you should do. And in my opinion, there's a lot more good than bad right now. I mean, looking at it right now, we had just a trial, esport Olympic event that happened with the Tokyo Olympics with the Gran Turismo. And I hope that eventually leads to more opportunities for more sim like titles, such as, maybe, I mean, iRacing is the obvious choice.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be a good thing to do, is have some sort of esport Olympics through iRacing. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, okay. Elitism in all forms of everything. When it comes to stuff like sim racing, like where the gear is getting more and more realistic and stuff like that, do you think there's any like shaming going on, like in terms of?
No, actually, I kind of like this one trend that's been going around, like essentially show your crappy rigs off.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, I think that's great. Like,
yeah.
And here's the thing. I get beat by people driving G29s, people driving wheels like
Same here. Yep.
The Tory whatever with no force feedback from China. Like there's people that are way faster. I don't think the good set of pedals that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Everything else, I don't think at the end of the day makes a huge difference in terms of performance. And from my testing, the new CSL pedals are pretty much as good as you could want in terms of performance. So I think if someone had the CSL pedals and even a wheel with hardly any force back, let's say just like a old G27 or something like that, I think they could be pretty much as fast as anybody if you had that combination. And so I don't think elitism really makes a lot of sense in sim racing. And because at the end of the day, it's not the biggest defining performance. It's what's in here and kind of just your natural reflexes and practice.
Yeah, I mean, I've been beat by people in controllers before. I'm like, damn, you're doing that on a controller? You're killing it.
That.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'm like, I always find that kind of annoying though, because it's like sometimes they'll have like assists or things like that in games.
Oh yeah.
For the controllers, and that annoys me. That's one thing I didn't like so much about Project Cars 2 with online play is some of the the support, some of the assists just were really. Sometimes made it feel like, there's not a huge incentive here to be sitting here and try to do this the simulation way. So, but I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, certain games are going to market for certain audiences, so I don't really have a problem with that overall, but it can get frustrating.
So back to system cross compatibility, or not compatibility, cross platforms. Does that bother you that, if you were to play with someone on like say PlayStation, if someone's playing with a controller, that would bother you a little bit, like if it's a racing game?
Depends on the assists. It's not so much the controller itself. If they're using a controller and the game has realistic, like the assists are just traction control and ABS and things like that, and there's no like stability control or things like that they can enable, or as long as I can turn those off in the other thing, I don't have a problem with it. The problem is certain games, like I was mentioning Project Cars 2, they can turn on certain assists that really essentially nullify. Just even if you were on a wheel, make it really easy and kind of nullify the ability for skill levels to make a difference. And sometimes that actually helps me being a bit slower, but it's not something that I want. I want more of that realistic factor in how the cars are handling. So for me, it's not so much the fact they're using a controller, it's the fact that certain games allow controller users to have certain assists, if that makes sense.
Okay. This is not really related to sim racing in general, but I think it'd be really cool if they made controllers with force feedback thumbsticks. Like they had resistance. It's definitely something for the future, but I was like really thinking about that when you said about the rumble motors being in more pedals. I'm like, damn, there's some features missing, like there's definitely room for improvement. I see that you have an F1 car, it looks to be in the background.
Yeah.
Is that old school?
1972. I'm not exactly sure what car it is. It might be a McLaren or Ferrari, but from 1972 Formula One season, I believe.
And you said that you're in a lobby that focuses more on vintage vehicles, right?
Yeah. So like the cars that I'm from mods we're only going to make cars 1975 and older. Like the mod pack we're making is the Donna Speed Pack. So it has 1886 and 1886 Mercedes.
Oh, okay.
We're making a 1906.
Was it steam powered?
No. It was the first actual automobile. No, it had a half horsepower, 1-cylinder engine.
Half horsepower. Okay.
So that's the car. We're including the Donna Speed Pack. We're including the 1906 Renault Grand Prix car that won the French Grand Prix that year, the first French Grand Prix ever. The 1906 Itala, which is the 3540. I'm also including the 1907 Itala 3645. So that's all going to be in that pack. Then I'm producing the 1934 Grand Prix pack, which is going to have all 5 Grand Prix cars: the Bugatti, Auto Union, Mercedes, Maserati, and Auto Union, Mercedes, Maserati, and Alfa Romeo. And so it's going to have all 5 of those cars in that pack. And so I'm focusing on older racing. And then there's going to be 2 free cars we're releasing, which is the 1937 Mercedes Streamliner, raced at Avis in 1937, and the 1924 T35 Bugatti, which is, the most winningest car ever in auto racing history with over 2,000 wins. So that's what we're working on. So as you'll see, the cars I'm building are vintage pre-war cars. I am going to be doing more in the 60s, but those cars align with where my passion is in sim racing, and that's in vintage cars, vintage content. That's why I like the WRC 10 game. One reason why I'm so attracted to it is it has those vintage modes, and I'm loving that. Like, that's what draws me into sim racing, is the ability to step back into the past. That's
okay. So with a lot of cars, both on public roads and in racing, like getting more and more into electrification and stuff, hybrid systems and whatnot, with your passion kind of like really trying to dig back deep into the vintage scene, does it upset you that it's not as well represented as like modern day racing?
Well, for me, I thought it left an opportunity, because if classic racing had been super popular in tons of cars, I would have never started my own studio. So I think it leaves an opportunity for to do some things in that space and build the cars how I want them, and I think that's cool. Overall, yeah, am I a little disappointed? Sure. Like, I hope Assetto Corsa 2. That's the big thing. Yeah. If they don't have like vintage cars, that would be a massive disappointment for me. I'd probably buy it, but I'd be very disappointed. That's huge for me. Like, I'll drive Assetto Corsa Competizione because it's a great game, and I don't mind driving GT cars, but I spend 90% of my time in cars older than 1975. It's kind of the years that I feel like that's kind of when the open-ended development kind of died, was around that 1975 era.
So is that one thing that kind of excites you about the new Gran Turismo coming out? Because, I mean, they typically focus on, vintage vehicles Okay.
And I hope they have some more vintage modes in there, perhaps. I mean, some type of racing through history, similar to how WRC 10 did it. If they had something like that included, that would be huge for me.
That game mode really upset me.
Really?
Maybe I just haven't got deep enough into it, but from what I've played of the WRC 10 vintage courses or whatever they're called, they're the same. Like I just feel like it's a cop out. Like, they just changed hairstyles and clothes and cars on the side, but it's the same. It's like, man,
I didn't have an issue with it, because see, the way I viewed it and the way I described it in my review that I did, it's essentially like in Assetto Corsa. You'll have people that make tracks, modern track, and then someone will come through like Pepperoni or something, and they'll come through and they'll create a track for that track, and it'll be a vintage skin. And they take someone else's and they just put the vintage skin, and I love that. So for me, it was just like, they're just putting vintage skins over the top of the regular tracks, and I thought that was great. So for me, it met my expectations, I guess. And then maybe for you, it wasn't quite. You were hoping for a little more built from scratch, a little more focused, which would be awesome. I admit that's awesome, but it wasn't what I was expecting, I guess.
Well, I think it's cool, but like when you advertise it in the game as like these game modes and these extra courses, I envision them as like an alternate route rather than like it's like it's the same thing, it's like
for some reason I had seen a video or something where they had essentially described it as just being reskinned. I don't know.
Man, I guess I didn't follow it enough.
So when I got to the game release, it was just like I knew what to expect. So I think that was the difference, was just the expectations of what we had seen going into it.
Yeah. I mean, I just read a couple things and I was all hyped about it, like, I get to kind of experience the past a little bit, but when I actually tried it out and I just saw like a couple people had some afros and stuff instead of. I know I keep on hanging on to that afro thing, but that was like the biggest striking difference. Like, that was the biggest difference to me, was like the 70s course or whatever, they had afros. That was it, and there's like more people standing in places they shouldn't be, so that was kind of cool. But
then I think the one track that was the most different was the Africa track in 1991 versus
I tried the Africa.
I think there was the chicane that was added in the track layout that wasn't there in the normal version. So it had a little bit of a difference, and I'm not sure how many little things like that are added. Like, like maybe there's some cones or barrier or something like that you have to dodge.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how much of that happens in the vintage track layouts, but yeah, you're right. The overall layout's the same.
Yeah, it's probably imperceivable unless you actually like do a side by side, in terms of the differences. This is one of the questions that I'm gonna have as a theme. There's actually quite a few questions that I'm having as a general theme throughout all these. Do you think, with how like the EPA is cracking down on racing and even road cars and things, more and more restrictions, do you think sim racing has the opportunity or the capability to take over in the racing space? Like 100%, like this is what racing is. There's no more fatal deaths, or like not fatal deaths, because all deaths are fatal. You know what I'm saying?
No, I could see maybe a country or two trying it, like going what was it? Switzerland? Yeah, Switzerland banned racing for a really long time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they after the 1955 Le Mans crash.
Oh, okay.
I think it was Switzerland. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I do. Okay.
Yeah. They banned it, but then recently they've allowed only electric cars to race. So they made an amendment to the law where they can only do electric racing. So they held the Formula E race in Switzerland. And so that's something that I think could potentially happen, is where they ban. I don't think racing will get banned completely, but I definitely think there will be countries that ban gasoline racing around the same time that they ban gasoline cars, because there will be countries that do that ban buying, selling, and I think they'll also ban the racing of gasoline powered vehicles. In terms of the United States, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think the majority of countries that won't happen. Because one reason too is, let's say it happens in a lot of countries, the racing will just move to those other countries that aren't, and it'll actually, it's just something that I think is kind of silly. Tying off of that, though, a lot of people are like, well, do you hate on the electrification of cars and things like that? Well, I think with the current technology we have, it's kind of silly to be like, we should be fully gas. But I think it's also kind of silly to be, we should be fully electric cars either. We have this ability to put two great things that each have their own unique weaknesses together, create a hybrid engine that is the best of both worlds. And in my opinion, that's where I see racing going, is once people get their head on straight and realize, why don't we just combine the best of both things? And we'll have small, essentially what we see in endurance racing. We have small 4-cylinder engines that are really powerful with turbos and things like that, combined with electric hybrid systems that are extremely fuel efficient, extremely powerful. And that's where I see racing going.
So relating to your passion and also the future electrification of things, or, whatever alternative fuel that we end up seeing, do you think sim racing has the capability to be the go-to location for older car enthusiasts, that you can't race those cars because they're bad for the environment?
In certain countries, I could see that, yeah. In certain countries, yes. But I do think you'll also be able to travel to other countries. Like, I don't think the United Kingdom's going to change. Like, you'll still be able to race older cars, I think, like Goodwood, things like that. The United States will still be the same way. And even if those countries were to, rein it in a bit, I don't think it would be, we're going to stop a couple events a year with vintage cars, because a lot of those people are very wealthy people who have a lot of influence politically. And I think there's just going to be those special events that will still stick around at the very least. So yes, I do think that for sim racing, I mean, even now, there's so many people that can't afford to drive a vintage car or even go to vintage racing, traveling or whatever.
Or maybe the car doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. And so sim racing is a great way to experience that for yourself. And I could see that growing, because just over time, we're going to lose more of those classic cars.
Yeah.
There could be more restrictions, which mean there's less events happening.
So sim racing is kind of a way to preserve racing, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to electrification, because I'm kind of wanting to see your perspective, because you tend to gravitate towards the vintage stuff. Have you tried an electric car in sim racing? Like, have you experienced it, and did you like it if you did?
I've tried the the race room? They had that electric Volkswagen hill climb vehicle.
Okay.
I tried that. I have tried the Formula E cars in R Factor 2, and there was a mod I think that came out that was like a company, it's like official mod for Assetto Corsa I tried as well. And it's whatever. I find the Formula E cars kind of terrible, but I think that's kind of intentionally the case. They're supposed to be terrible because it creates better racing, which is kind of true.
Okay.
If a car drives bad, it kind of naturally produces better racing, I think, in my opinion. And as we've seen, I mean, you look at the 1960s and stuff, they were fast, but those things handled pretty atrociously, but the racing was good.
Yeah.
You look at modern day racing, and some of the cars that look more like bricks seem to produce better racing than cars that are really got good downforce and things like that. So I think they're designed for more of the high racing quality, but to drive, they're terrible. And I didn't like them. Now, the hill climb vehicle in Race Room, I thought it was pretty cool. And I think, of course, obviously hill climbs are the perfect opportunity for electric cars because of the defined distance. No need to pit or anything like that, and you can just do the distance. And so I think they're cool. For me, they don't seem as alive. Like with a gasoline car, you can fire it up, you can have it well tuned, everything. But sometimes that gasoline engine will have a little backfire, or it'll have a little life of its own almost, and it kind of does its own thing. And that makes it just feel more alive. Electric cars are kind of just, they work or they don't. It's just on and off. It's kind of more dead to me.
It's probably what people experienced back when the transition from horses to dirt bikes. You have control of the horse, kind of. I don't really agree with people riding horses. I think it's really bad for the horse. But people do what they do. But oh, good. I'm glad you centered that. I was about to actually ask you about that. But that sort of transitional period, like where the horse, it feels more live, so you feel more connected to it because it does have its own life a little bit. You have more of a relationship with it rather than you just doing exactly what you tell it to do. So basically with the Formula E, you're saying they were kind of more boring to drive?
They're just hard to drive, in my opinion. They're like sleds. They're like metal sleds with poor brakes. And so it's just like, it always feels like when I'm driving them, it's like, okay, this thing just doesn't handle very well. And then you're always thinking about braking. Like, it's always about braking. Like, I've got to brake early, make sure I brake smoothly, because brake by wire, which has its own complications. And so it's just like, I got to brake smoothly. I got to brake.
I don't know if I agree with brake by wire. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, it's pretty janky in how it feels, at least in how they're translating it through the sim. And so I did not really enjoy that so much. I felt like it was a bit disconnected from the car as well, which you are essentially. So it's a bit, combine that with the fact that it's literally like a metal heavy sled that's not designed to be agile. It just was a pretty awful experience. Now I think maybe if you're racing with people, it'd be a bit more fun, but it's not designed for the driver's enjoyment. It's designed for the viewer's enjoyment, which if you watch a Formula E race and you forget about the fact it's an electric car and there's no sound and all that, the races are very competitive. So
do you think it makes more sense because electric cars are basically just computers on wheels? Electric steering assist, I believe it's similar to a force feedback wheel, right? Like, I'm not really sure the technology, but hydraulic power steering it's fluids, and you're actually kind of fighting against forces. But I think with electric steering on an electrified steering rack or whatever, I think it's actually a force feedback system, right? Like,
I don't know if Formula E, are the steering racks electrified or are they still hydraulic? I thought they were still normal.
I think a lot of racing cars are hydraulic. But basically, my question is, do you think it kind of makes more sense to replicate those newer vehicles because we have a lot of cars with electric power steering? Like, it just kind of goes hand in hand better than kind of trying to replicate a car that is more mechanical. And
I think at the end of the day, either way you do it, it's going to be difficult because I don't think we're going to have a lot of access to that information. Manufacturers aren't going to give ready access to that information for the electric steering. So I think both of them are still going to be a guessing game trying to interpret the feeling. Sure, I think, yes, you're right. You could more accurately interpret that information for a more modern car using the electric steering. But at the end of the day, I don't think anyone's going to give us relevant information. So at the end of the day, you're still going to be doing your best. Okay, how does this feel? Then the person trying to create the game engine or whatever is going to go over to their rig and try to make sure, okay, we'll tune the code. Does this feel right? I still think there's going to be a lot of guesswork in both. But I do agree. I think potentially down the road, especially if someone got some of that inside information, there could be a lot more realistic one-to-one, or at least closer to one-to-one between real life and the sim racing rig. I agree there's something there.
Do you think we're holding ourselves back as sim racers trying to replicate a real life car rather than kind of looking forward and seeing how maybe we could improve the driving experience with the gear that we have, like maybe some technology that isn't present in real life vehicles, like maybe use sim racing as a testing ground for technology that should be implemented into real cars?
That's a good question. I haven't thought of that before. In some ways, I guess the biggest avenue that we're going to see is through the wheel development. We're seeing now through manufacturers and see how that goes. Because, I mean, I guess the next step would be, I don't know how much force feedback would compare, but if you're talking about pedal sets, we were talking about that before, perhaps there's some of that. Perhaps there's some seats. You have the race car seats. How can we make this more ergonomic while still being safe? Well, one way to test the ergonomics would be we could give this to sim racers, and sim racers will sit in chairs for a real long time.
Yeah.
And you could essentially, at a 24-hour event or 12-hour event, maybe at the Nürburgring, how they'll often do special, everyone's got pre-made rigs. Seat manufacturer could come in and be like, okay, we're going to provide all the seats here, and this is a new design, and we want to get the feedback from the drivers that use it to see what they think of the comfortability. So I think that could be potential avenues. I just find it's going to be a little bit tricky because I don't think there's a lot that can translate to the force feedback of the wheelbase that would translate to the car. Maybe there's something there you could do. I guess now that I think about it, if you're talking about like the electric drive system, is there a way that a company could essentially take that exact system, put it into a wheelbase, and then sell it as a force feedback wheelbase?
Okay. And then they can do all their testing in someone's living room. Yeah.
Yeah, and how much of that translates, I'm not exactly sure, but to me it does sound like there's maybe some possibilities there. I hadn't thought about it before, but yeah.
Okay. There's not really like a middle ground on this. Like usually people either try to tune their personal gear to replicate what they think or know is real life, or they go for the most information that they can get to be able to handle the car in the game that they're playing, for competitive reasons. How do you personally tune your gear, and do you feel like one or the other is important or more important than the other? Like in terms of, is it more important to replicate real life or just do what's best for your gaming?
So this is actually an interesting question because I typically don't tune my gear. I typically leave everything default.
Okay.
That's because I want to test it how the manufacturer shipped. I don't mess with the force feedback settings in the games because I feel like that's the most authentic way to evaluate a game. I will mess with the strength.
Okay.
Excuse me. The force feedback strengths occasionally in games or whatever. And when I do a review video, I'll often open up for like a game. I'll be like, as typical, this game was reviewed using default settings for both the wheel and whatever wheels I'm using, I'll list them out, and the game itself. Or if I do to alter something, I'll be like, and this game was reviewed using whatever this wheel, and I increased the strength by 50% on the force feedback. But it's typically something very simple I say at the very beginning of my review video, because the biggest thing is the majority, and this is something I've done through polling people, just friends I know, most people don't adjust those settings, or if they do, it's very little. And so I want to be evaluating things the same way most people who are sim racing are evaluating them. And so that's something that's a very conscious choice. And I know I'm missing out perhaps on a bit more of the immersiveness, but I feel like overall in terms of being able to fit in with all the other casual sim racers out there, which is why, I call myself a casual sim racer on my channel, I want to have the same experience that most people are having.
That's a really interesting take on that. And
yeah.
I think it's all about perspective, and whatever you think your gear should be doing and providing for you, that's what it should be doing. So in your case, you're trying to think about it as for the community. You're kind of taking one for the community, and that's really cool.
But also too, the surprising thing is I have occasionally gone in and tweaked things, and I honestly don't think a lot. I mean, it can be better, but overall, unless you're doing it for every single game across the board and stuff like that, it's not that big of a difference. And you're going to have to do it for pretty much every game because every game's different. And a lot of times that default setting, the reason why it is the default is because across all the games, it's a pretty solid setting. And so at least that's what I found in my experience. Now, I've never used a direct drive wheel before, so I'm interested to see how that will go. But with the all the other products I've used, so far, the default's been totally fine.
I will say with direct drive wheelbases in general, and I'm sure you've heard it many times before, like the smaller details in games are much more apparent, and sometimes more flaws in games are easily felt with a belt-driven wheelbase really acts as a buffer, and it kind of it's kind of an equalizer.
Especially gear drive wheels, which in my opinion are just terrible. But you look like G49, you can't even feel the like. You get in games, you're like, okay, like I feel the jankiness of the wheel more than I feel the forces.
Oh, are you a tech guy? Like, do you know about like?
So I was actually an IT person at one point in my life. So yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar with like electronics and like components and things.
Yeah, I built all my computers and together. So yes, I'm very well. Yes.
What technology do you feel does not belong in sim racing that you see often?
Oh my goodness, yeah. That's a good question. Gear-driven wheels.
Yeah, there you go.
Gear, anything. Get it out. It is trash at this point. It is just, it disgusts me. The G923, that was disgusting. To be straight up honest. I saw that by Logitech, and it was just like, this is just corporate greed right here. And the way they marketed it, and then they got Alonso from Formula One to come in and like put his face over it. I was just like, this is just horrible. And I thought that was terrible. Some of the other things that I think don't necessarily belong in sim racing are some of the aspects you'll more see on the technology side of things. You'll see games that are right now being released as full releases before they're finished. You'll see just the rush development cycles. I mean, we're looking at one potentially with the new NASCAR game, stuff like that, which isn't so much hardware side of things, but it's just leading to this reputation. I mean, Automobilista 2, but then you're like, okay, Automobilista 2, they didn't do it that bad. They released kind of transparent. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, but this is a slippery slope we're on. The next thing you know, we end up with NASCAR game that's coming out. It hasn't released yet, but it appears to be it's going to be a dumpster fire, at least for the first month or first week. So it's like, this is what we're headed towards. And to me, I have no room for that. Like, I have a release dates for the mods I'm creating right now. If my mods aren't up to snuff, or I send them out to reviewers and they're not up to snuff, I'll push those back. Because there's no way I'm going to release something that is not at 99.5, 99.9% of the way there. I get sometimes until you have that mass release, you don't identify everything. But we're getting games released that are like 80% of the way there. And it's just
WRC 10.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad the first week, but I got to say, at least from my experience, they fixed a lot of the problems within about a week or two. So
I'm still experiencing I mean, we both got some pretty powerful systems there, like based on your CPU that you. I don't think anybody with the maximum grunt that we have should have any issues running that game. It's not
Are you still having issues, and what kinds are they?
Oh yeah, I have to still do my little DirectX 11, 12 switching to fix things, and sometimes that doesn't even work. I get frame skipping, I get the game crashing.
Interesting. The only ever issue I had was peripherals. So like, it didn't recognize
those too.
My Thrustmaster or button box, so I had to update all those with new drivers. And once I did that, I mean, everything was perfect, and I haven't had a single issue since then. So I updated the wheels and the button box from those respective manufacturer side of things. And that's how I approached it. So,
okay. Going back to the technology that you don't feel belongs, maybe.
Yeah.
One of my biggest things that I don't feel belongs is potentiometers. How do you feel about that?
I'm fine with it still. I think that technology isn't that far off, and I think there's an opportunity for that, potentially the price dropping. If let's say someone wants to release a pedal set that's pretty solid, but they want to do it for like $50 and it's all potentiometers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm all for that. I think there's room for it in the lower end market. Now, if you're going to release, like, we're just looking at the CSL DD pedals, or those don't have potentiometers anymore. And so I think that's kind of lowering the bar. That's now the ceiling. Like, you got to be below that if you want to use potentiometers.
They got to be $25 pedals now.
Or at least you have to have some unique feature. Like, but if you're releasing a $150 pedal set with potentiometers, sure, I think that's kind of pretty pathetic unless it's got something really unique about it. But I think it's definitely should be something that should be looked at for potentially cheaper pedals, because at the end of the day, I want the prices to drop as low as we can get these prices.
Okay. One of the reasons I asked that is because I don't remember what pedal set it was, but it was like an upper end pedal set. And
Oh yeah,
And
on the Sim Racing Garage, I saw one. Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, potentiometers, and I had people arguing with me in the comment section, like saying, like, well, there's different qualities of potentiometers. I'm like, well, no matter what, a potentiometer will fail before a magnet will.
Yep.
And I'm like, there's no point in putting that technology on anything over like we were talking about, like $25. You know, like it's a technology that it has its place, but I don't think it belongs on high-end gear. Like
I wonder too. I wonder how long some of those stuff that's coming out, how long it's been in development. When I see stuff like that, I wonder if this guy's been working on this pedal set or something like that for some of these smaller companies. Maybe he's working on it for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. That's a good point.
That's the case. So it's one of those things too, where it's like I'm not going to expect it this first year, like Thrustmaster, their GT2 wheel that came out. I'm not going to hate on them for it. It hurts them, but it's not like I think they intentionally try to do it. They're developing something. Cycles can be quite long. For smaller companies, it can be even longer. Now, if in 2 years we're still seeing companies produce it, that's the thing that ticks me off about Logitech. If someone does what Logitech did, where it's clearly now gears are outdated. They've been outdated for 3 years.
Oh, been outdated longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least. And you look at that and you see the same thing happening with pedals. I think then you start to question, okay, do they really care? But I think right now we have a little bit of a grace period at least.
Okay. You know, that's a good point, actually. I didn't think about that. Like, you know, I'm thinking about it from a consumer brain because I don't, you know, it's good to have your insight on this kind of stuff because you kind of understand a little bit more because you're actually producing things and you have background on that kind of stuff.
And I deal with the grumpy
companies all the time. Like,
why do people hate us? We're worked really hard on this. And I'm like, well, because the other guy did better. Like they just released a better product. And I'm sorry. Like I know you worked on this really hard for a few years.
Are you into Dirt Rally 2 at all?
I do race it quite a bit, though now that the historical content is in WRC 10, WRC 10's completely replaced Dirt Rally 2 for me.
Okay, yeah, and since you're not really into VR too much, so I could see that being the clear choice, actually. And I think the physics are way better in WRC 10, in my opinion.
Yes, force feedback, I would say, is not quite as good, but the physics are better.
Yeah, I was watching that... when I don't know if it's just my particular wheelbase or my setup, but when I popped WRC 10 in, I immediately felt I had to relearn everything, like in terms of like, you know, my braking points, like, you know, traction levels, how to get the car, the rear end to kind of slide out. They changed a lot with the physics from 9.
100%.
I actually preferred the physics and the force feedback of WRC 10 over almost everything. Dirt Rally 2 still feels pretty good force feedback wise with my setup, with my tuning. But I'm also trying to replicate my personal vehicle in real life, and I think I was able to achieve a pretty realistic feeling with WRC 10. What were the main issues you were having with the force feedback? I watched a little bit, but
so the big thing was the vibration. I mean, for me, it's way too strong on the vibration effect, so I had to actually turn that down. Which, like I told you, I almost always use default, but it was just so bad. Like I'm talking, my wheel was shaking from the vibration effects. That was just like this is horrible. So like I had to turn those down to almost nothing, and then the strength wasn't enough. I had to crank that up with the T300 to max pretty much. And so it was one of those things where it's just like, this is a bit odd. Typically the strengths are, if you do have to adjust it, it's not that much. But with this, it was like a sizable increase. Maybe I know I went up all the way. I may have reined it in a little bit from max. I think maybe it's more like 150 now. But it definitely needed quite a sizable increase in the force feedback, and then also had to drop that vibration. Because also, too, I messed around with the vibration effects. I think they're pretty terrible, to be honest. I don't know if they're more controller catered, but I thought they were pretty bad.
I think you're talking about like the suspension settings?
No, just the vibration effects.
When I want to get a more lively wheel feel out of that game, I bump the suspension up because then I can feel all the little bumps.
Okay. I haven't done that yet. I haven't messed with any of the smaller force feedback settings because they have the force feedback, and then you have beneath that you have like the vibration settings. And so I turned the vibrations down to like 5%.
Okay, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, like that sort of like constant feel.
Yeah. And then I took the gain of the force feedback and I turned that up. And I didn't adjust any of the individual sliders though, because I know most people aren't going to adjust the individual sliders. Now, what you said is a good point about the suspension. So there's probably a lot of people that's something, if they're listening and they want more feel, they should try that out. But for me, I think I've got it at a pretty good spot. So
yeah. And not to take away from your interview, but if anybody wants to know, I do have a tutorial for that, like in terms of getting a realistic feeling. Yeah. Since you started sim racing, and I know you've been doing it for a long time, but since you started, do you feel that it has improved your driving in real life?
I've been doing it for a lot of my life.
So maybe it's harder to differentiate, like.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I've always been a pretty good driver. I go back to, I mean, I've had an incident where there was a car, you know, sometimes there'll be a long line of traffic. This was like one of the first times I was actually driving a real car. You know, I still had my, you know, temporary permit and all that. And I'm driving down this highway and there's a bunch of backed up traffic and some guy 5 feet, I mean, pulls out into my lane. And I just take it straight off into the ditch because it's next to where the railroad tracks are. So there's those ditches. And I went straight into the ditch, drifted it through the ditch, put it back on the road and went around. And I'm talking, it was a split-second reflex. Everyone in the car is screaming. And I'm just like, well, we're fine.
Yeah. And
it was just one of the things, like, I felt like getting into driving a real car, I felt like I had years of experience because of the fact of sim racing. So I think sim racing does translate, maybe not so much in how you drive the car, but in terms of your reflexes and being able to react to things. Also, too, there's the thing of when I drive, I know not to, when I see a car stop in front of me suddenly or something like that on the freeway, I know, oh, I'm not just going to slam on the brakes here.
Yeah.
I'm going to slam on the brakes for a second to give me enough time to look to my right and to my left in my mirrors because I got to go to my right or my left.
Yep.
Once I figure out which way is the most clear, lift off the brake and you just go because you can't turn when you got your brakes on.
Yeah.
So that's something that I feel like the way that can happen so quickly and everything, that's directly because of my sim racing experience, keeping that sharp. I think sim racing teaches you a lot, and how also you learn through sim racing because you're more on those extremes more regularly. So when you end up on those performance extremes in real life, you know more accurately how to react to, okay, what do I got to do here with this car? Because I do it all the time in sim racing.
Yeah.
Maybe not exactly how to steer the car, how to handle it, because I don't think that translates as so much one-to-one. But some of those reaction things do, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean you have to adapt to even in sim racing when you go from one car to the next, you have to adapt. So you're able to translate the reflexes, like you're training your reflexes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And once you acclimate yourself to the vehicle, you're able to kind of your brain can interpret all the signals it's receiving and be like, okay, I need to do this to get what I want out of it.
I think, and you were making a point earlier, that one question you asked about, like how sim racing in real life, how is that going to interact? I think one thing that could be a big factor is like in training. I'm talking truck drivers, regular teenagers, having the ability for kids to sit down in a sim racing rig and do some laps, I think, before, let's say, during their training course, and then you stick them in a real car. I think that would increase the odds of, safe driving and stuff like that.
Any bad habits that you feel have been created by sim racing that have transferred over to your real life driving?
So I drive a little truck, it's a Mazda, essentially a little gray Ford pickup.
I didn't
truck.
know Mazda made trucks.
It's essentially just a rebranded Ford from the 2003.
Okay.
But like the little, what are they called? The little, what I'm talking, the little Ford ones that are just tiny. I forget what Ford
the
Ranger,
S10s. I'm thinking of Chevy.
Rangers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's just a rebranched 2003 Ford Ranger essentially. I drive one of those. That's my day-to-day car. I don't drive anything fancy. And so it's one of those things, the top speed on that thing before the engine starts really revving and things like that is about 82 miles an hour. So there's not a lot of bad habits I can have in a truck like that.
Because you don't have opportunity to show them off. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's part of it too. For me, it's one of those things where I put my money into other things right now as he is, young and growing, and I got student loans I'm still paying off and things like that. So it's one of those things where I'm putting my money into other things, so it doesn't really give me the opportunity. If I had a Mustang or something like that, maybe more of those things would show up. But right now, there's just no real way for bad habits to show up. And actually, I think so far, sim racing only has a positive impact on my driving in real life.
Man, that kind of ruins my next question. My question leading up to that was going to be, would you trade your car in real life, would you walk to the grocery store as opposed to driving? You know, would you, to be able to keep your sim rig?
Well, the problem is I live right currently an hour and 15 minutes from where I work.
Okay. So yeah,
so it might be more of a necessity thing. But would I downgrade? Sure, I guess, to keep it. I don't know.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it's kind of one of those things where I'm just stuck in a necessity situation where I have to have a vehicle. So yeah.
Okay.
I do have a couple motorcycles, and if you're gonna ask me, would I trade my motorcycle to keep my sim rig? Yeah, I do that. I trade my second vehicle to keep my sim rig. Yeah.
Okay. What is your ultimate dream car?
I mean, can I go with a race car? Or does that have to be street
You can go with anything.
I mean, let's just go with like the Mercedes latest, the Mercedes that Valtteri Bottas just got an upgraded engine, I think, in Formula One. Let's give me one of those things.
That'd be great to see you driving around the street with that thing. Okay, so in terms of like consumer grade vehicles, maybe like what about that?
So I've thought about, so there's GT4 cars, some of them that are road legal, like the Jannetta and things like that, or even a GT5 car. I've thought about something like that. Actually, that's kind of in the back of my mind. Currently I'm saving up to purchase a home and things like that. But once I purchase a home, one of my next things I'd like to save up for, and once I kind of have my student loans all paid off and all that, my next purchase is to try and get like a GT4, GT5 car and buy that, because essentially then I could drive it to the track, do a track day with it, or if I had to, I could use it as a backup vehicle to go to work if my other car was down. But it would essentially be a race car. I could enter races, things like that, but I could also use it as a backup vehicle as well. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about.
I only do like local racing and stuff, and I mostly just go out by myself and just like tear shit up in the dirt. Like I find like areas that people don't care about, kind of thing. But one of the biggest issues I struggle with is because I drive my vehicle to where I'm going, and when I get punctures or something like that, like I always bring spares, but I get punctures often, and then I got to get my tire fixed after I get back and stuff. But going to races in your vehicle sucks, because like there's a really good chance that you're gonna crash, and yeah. But also your tires, learning more about that, like, because I have a set of 4 brand new gravel tires in the back there, and I'm so hesitant to mount them because they're not street legal, and I don't know how much an insurance company would take a look at your tires, but I feel like if it were like a fatal crash or something like that, they would investigate more so than if it was just like, oh, you just need a new front end or something like that. So having those tires, I guess you'd have to bring like an entire set of 4 regular tires to drive your car to the track.
And honestly, at that point, it becomes a better idea just to
trailer
get a trailer.
Yeah. Which sucks, because then you got to buy a truck. Or a bigger truck.
Hey, that's the next purchase after I want to get one of those F350s and real truck,
Oh man, those things are beasts. Out of all the different types of racing that you see represented in sim racing, what do you feel is best represented?
A GT3 racing. We essentially right now in sim racing, that's the area that the manufacturers and sim racing developers are the closest, and so we see the most essentially sharing of that background information, what's going on behind the scenes, and also you'll see real drivers racing it. You see Assetto Corsa Competizione now actually being part of the World Endurance Championship there and actually counting for points, the races. And so it's something that we're getting really close there. At least I feel like it's the closest of most other areas. And then also you look at just the most amount of sims. We got R Factor 2, we got Assetto Corsa Competizione, Assetto Corsa, Automobilista 2, it goes on and on. All have GT3 cars. Just for example, we got a lot of, like Porsche and Mercedes-Benz GT3 cars are pretty much in every sim. And so you just see how those cars are prevalent, and it's just an area where companies and sim racing developers have a lot of information and data, and it seems like we're also getting a lot of information back from people driving real racing drivers who can really praise those simulation experiences as being really close to life, which is, I think, a really cool thing for the sim racing community as a whole.
And I agree. Like the vehicles are much more recognizable. Like you don't see F1 cars driving around the street, So but you can recognize. Oh, that's a Corvette or that's a Ferrari. I mean, you don't see many of those either. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, the nice thing too is like if you sometimes see like with at least in GT4 which is the baby brother GT3, you'll see the Mustang and the Camaro, which are much more customer approachable.
With the coronavirus, I mean, I know it's still around, and I know there's still people suffering from it, but we're just kind of more used to it. When the coronavirus first hit and like all racing was shut down for a good while. How did you feel? Did it make you feel excited as a sim racer? Because you were already into sim racing by then, was it exciting to kind of see what you're passionate about, like kind of being brought to the forefront?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I support the growth of sim racing hugely. It was one of those things too where it was a steady diversion. I actually was insanely busy during a lot of that time. So it didn't, like, I wasn't able myself to put much more time into it, which was kind of unfortunate because I saw how many like other channels were taking off at that time, and my channel kind of just maintained its steady growth because I just wasn't able to devote the time. I mean, a lot of it was setting up for this job I just got. And so it's like I got bigger things in store. And also, I mean, the one thing it did do, I guess, is it triggered the idea for me, let's go with this Casual Sim Studios thing once I landed that job, because I was like, I see how much the market's grown. There's potential here. I have 1,030 subscribers on my channel right now. If I could get roughly that many people to purchase the sim, the pack, it's going to be the one pack is going to be $10. The first pack will be $4.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Get that many people to purchase both of those packs, I've roughly, not quite, but I've made a lot of the money that I've put into it. And then if I sell more than that, it starts becoming, okay, now we can start saving up, putting money towards future projects, things like that. So that's essentially my goal. The goal is hopefully 2,000 sales. That's of the packs. And that right there, if I could hit that mark, I'm golden. I've made a little bit of profit I can put towards future projects, and I've covered the cost that I've put in. So that's kind of the market, and I feel like that's doable. So that all, though, became possible because I saw how much the scene grew. So in some ways, it kind of, I guess, the growth of the sim racing community during the pandemic and stay-at-home order kind of set the course for Casual Sim Studios to come into existence.
So so you kind of like are viewing them both as a symbiotic sort of business, your mod and your channel, and you kind of like working together, like.
So actually, I got the idea for it because everyone's selling merch. So I started contacting people and stuff, and I was like, okay, like, what's cool or whatever. And I started reaching out to, like, I told you I was contacting manufacturers. So I was actually thinking about maybe creating my own wheel or maybe power supplies, or like I had lots of ideas. And it just was
power supplies. The CSL boost kit.
Because I had heard about the CSL boost kit. Yeah. And so there's all these different things. I was like, and it was just impossible. I just couldn't make it work. And then I was like, okay, well. And then I came with the idea. So I started reaching out to some people about building a couple cars for me to sell as merch. Well, it ended up, next thing you know, I'm hiring people and starting a company. And then I got so much positive feedback that I was like, oh, maybe I should do this like big time. And so that's where I kind of decided, I got the money right now. I could right now, because essentially the other thing was the loan deferment in the United States. I don't have to pay back my loans. So that's kind of where I got the money. It was a combination of the new job and the loan deferment. And I was like, well, I could just stick this money into paying off my loans, or I could try to put this towards a mod studio.
Yeah, it's a great idea, and it's a growing industry, and I think it'll only get bigger. It's kind of strange. Like, a lot of people look at, the pandemic as a negative thing, and it has been obviously mostly negative, but it's also created a lot of new ways to do business, and different approaches that maybe we didn't see as viable before. So,
well, yeah, and I think as sim racers, for you and me and others in the community, we thankfully were in an area that grew as a result of it. One of our greatest hobbies and enjoyments in life grew. Yeah. It would have really sucked if we were in an area that shrunk. Like we were, into, I don't know, something out in public that then essentially we couldn't do at all anymore. that would, I think, change our outlook a lot too. But thankfully, we're in an area that, as an end result, had at least a positive kind of takeaway.
Now, I don't want to take too much credit because I just started sim racing relatively, about a year and a half ago, something like that. Interestingly enough, I actually started sim racing to help recover my left shoulder after surgery. I had a BMX accident, and I felt like I would combine racing with just getting my shoulder better. I'm like, how can I do that? And then I started researching, and I'm like, damn, like it's come far along since, because my last experience with a wheel was like Gran Turismo 3 on PlayStation 2. I had a Logitech, whatever that was back then.
Driving Force GT or whatever. Yeah.
So I haven't been doing it for super long, but I don't know why did I say that? I think I was just clarifying. I didn't want to take full credit for that because I kind of was part of that wave of
okay.
Of
so you were the
interest.
new wave coming in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. You're like, I think differently of you now, but no.
No. I mean, I knew you were relatively new at doing the YouTube channel, but I didn't know how long you've done the sim racing, really.
Yeah. No. I've actually been doing YouTube for over 10 years. Before sim racing, I still do BMX content occasionally. I still ride a lot on my own and stuff. I used to do airsoft and firearms. I used to do a lot of firearm content. That's actually how my channel grew the most, was firearm content. So a lot of my subscribers don't watch my newer content. I've really shifted focus, and people probably hate me for it, but that's why I named my channel my name, because it doesn't pigeonhole me.
Random, right?
It can be whatever I want, but people do expect certain content out of me, and but yeah, since I've shifted to sim racing, I think I have seen some growth, definitely more than with like BMX content, but airsoft and firearms was really taken off, and I really wish I could still do firearm content, but the political climate is not in my favor. And YouTube's policies too are really restrictive with firearm content.
I just saw actually recently, it was kind of funny, a guy go from doing YouTube sim racing content to firearm content. That's just all
funny.
he ever does. It's like short clips, sometimes like 20-30 minutes, just him with another gun just shooting. And that's it. I found it kind of funny.
Yeah, you see a lot of people with similar interests. A lot of people that like BMX like cars, a lot of people that like airsoft like video games, so like they really kind of intermingle, and it's really kind of cool to see the communities come together. And actually my newest mod with the SimMagic Q1 nighttime quiet mod, or whatever I'm going to call it, is a paintball, and it's kind of funny now, and they're trying to reach out to me to get some more things developed for this little project I'm doing. It's kind of funny, but I think you've really brought a lot of really good information to the table, a lot of good insight with your position and being a part of the modding community, and being a lawyer, like the legal side of things too. I think that really adds to your skill set. I saw in your, I don't know if it's called a bio, but you had visited some real life tracks. Can you go over some of those?
I essentially, where I live in California. And so when I travel around, I'll drive on a street circuit or something like that. That used to be a circuit back in the day. I stopped doing that because I've been working in the background. Can't talk a lot about it, but I'm working on a second channel that will be more real racing focused and potentially more history focused. Called the History of Racing. I can give you the title of it. And anyways, I'm working on employing some people and stuff like that, and actually coming out with a full-fledged, production quality studio to produce some history stuff. I don't know how much I'll feature on the channel. I may feature a bit, but I'm hoping to bring in a lot of other people and kind of just oversee it and really have a history racing channel that'll be talking about kind of history of racing, talking about tracks, driving around. And the one reason why I stopped is because those videos were just recorded on my cell phone. They're pretty low quality. And so we're working on getting a couple of GoPro Hero 10s, and we're going to hook them up to some vehicles, and we're going to really go out and get some high quality footage and just... We're going to when we do release that channel, it's going to have a selection of videos already pre-done. So essentially, I'll have like maybe 3 to 6 months of videos lined up, ready to go, a couple of series, and it'll just boom, launch all at once. So I don't know when that's going to release because I'm very busy with kind of the casual sim studios right now and stuff like that with the mod content. But I am potentially a year or two maybe that'll be coming out. So it's kind of a longer term project, but I'm already at the point where I've essentially hired a couple of individuals to begin churning out content part-time. So it's nothing really that big, but it's just something that I'm working on for long term.
Okay, so and would this channel currently be the best place to find out when that's actually going to be happening?
Yeah. So everything will be, the Casual Sim Racer is going to be much more on my laid back channel. I'm going to be sharing things like that, and it's going to be where all my sim racing stuff's focused. Where you'll find out about all the mods that we're producing through Casual Sim Studios, everything like that. And of course, I'll also share everything else that's going on outside of that. I'll share community posts and things like that.
Okay.
So.
Well, cool, man. Like, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and I know you seem like you got a lot of shit going on, and that's really cool. So I really appreciate your time. Yeah. I really appreciate your time, man, and thank you for showing me around your gear and really like letting me have a view into your life.
I definitely enjoyed the interview and talking with you, and I hope people watching this are gonna enjoy kind of some of the things that we highlighted, and have a good one.
Sounds good, man. Have a good day.
All right. You too.
So that was a really cool conversation we had. I really appreciate his knowledge in a lot of different areas of the sim racing world that I really had no idea about. So thank you to a casual sim racer. Have a good day. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.